Happy back to school, everybody. Been seeing all of the little ones going back, and I'm sure no matter if you are, well, I mean, there's got to be still a few kids out there, maybe. I don't know how interesting a 200-plus episode podcast is to very younger children, but there's got to be some of you listening who are either heading back to high school or they're heading into university or college or whatever degree they're part of, potentially for the first time. So welcome back to school and welcome back to Elwood City Limits, the episodic Arthur podcast. And of course, Lucas, you're in a constant state of going back to school.
It's true. Work's busy again. I work at a university, so lots of hustle and bustle today as the students return to campus.
Yep, and I'm waiting for the weather to get a little bit cooler, just because it's been a little bit close. It's not ideal gaming weather. We were talking before we started recording here that we both have a video game that is taking up a lot of our time and thought, and it's just not the type of weather where you want to be sitting for a long time and looking at a screen. So I'm a little bit sweaty today.
Yeah, it's humid. It's that weird. It's funny because I also, nobody cares. The local weather chat, you know what they say about Nova Scotia weather. You don't like it, wait 5 minutes. Yesterday was like the best weather of the year, in my opinion. Like it was like literally the nicest day of the whole year, where it was sunny, but it wasn't too hot. And then today it's just a muggy and still kind of gross.
Well, I think that is actually a pretty decent segue into the fact that depending on when you're listening to this, you can still be a help, or we want to thank you for your help. So, patrons, if you are listening to this before Sunday, the end of Sunday, September 10th, remember that you can still vote for us as the best podcast in Halifax at vote.thecoast.ca. If you have done so already, hey, we really appreciate you taking the time to do that. If you haven't yet, go to vote.thecoast.ca. Now, you will have to sign up, and probably with a Canadian postal code there, so make sure that you do that, and vote for us in the arts and entertainment category as best podcast. If you are listening on the free feed, the time has already passed. So if you have taken the time to vote for us, thank you very, very much. We really appreciate that you did that. And now we just have to wait for a couple months until we find out exactly what's going to happen this year.
I'm waiting. I, for one, am waiting with bated breath.
Every year, I don't have the data for this, but every year it feels like we get a little closer. And I'd like to believe that that's true. And we just keep bringing in more listeners, hearing from you, and it would be nice to get on the board before it's all said and done, so we will have to wait and see. And speaking of people who have voted for us, that includes you listeners, who we like to hear from, at elwoodcitylimits@gmail.com, which is where you can send in your emails. We just have a quick one here from a newer listener named Pav, who says, "Hey guys, thanks for answering my Hogan question," referring to a question about Hulk Hogan from a couple of episodes ago. "This email is about that singing moose. Am I the only one that finds him so annoying? I've never disliked a character in Arthur, but there's something about him I just can't stand. I watched that episode over a decade ago, and years later, if I watch it again, he just annoys me so much. Something about him. Thanks again from Birmingham, UK." So that's from Pav. So we're talking about the singing moose in the premiere episode of Season 2 of Arthur, which is played by Art Garfunkel. So right out the gate, Pav, maybe Simon and Garfunkel isn't for you, if you feel so strongly about that.
Yeah, I mean, listen, opinions are like something else. Everyone has them. I'm going to have to disagree with the listener here. Now, first of all, I guess he is only referred to in the episode as, quote, the singing moose. But I've always actually thought of him as Art Garfunkel. Like, it's Art, like, it's similar to how Mr. Rogers, when he's in Arthur, or Matt Damon, when they're in Arthur, they are just themselves. And I just assumed that the kids didn't know who Art Garfunkel was, so he wasn't, And also, doesn't he show up again at some point, like in an audience, and they're like, "And it's Art Garfunkel."
They've used his character model again a couple of times. But not necessarily he just kind of lives there.
My homework for the listener is to go listen to The Waters of March and let me know if they like that song or not, and maybe it'll change their opinion on the Singing Moose, because I personally am a big fan. I would say that we've talked about this before. Of all the celebrity guest spots, that's amongst my favorite, or at least the most memorable to me.
It's interesting. I've never really had an opinion about his voice one way or another. I could see how that particular tone of voice could be annoying to somebody, but it isn't really to me. It's just very nostalgic, I guess, for when I was younger. But, of course, many, many opinions out there, and we love hearing yours at elwoodcitylimits@gmail.com. We also love to hear from our patrons. That could be on the ECL Discord, or it could be on patreon.com itself, which is where people are signing up to support us. And we want to thank you for that, especially by name. We want to thank people like Ian Collis and John Griswold. Thank you to Kevin Noon and Jake Bailey. Thank you to Muppet Baby Cat and Revd. Thank you to Valeria. Thank you to Sydney Long and to Aurora Borealis. Thank you, Ricardo A. Soto. And thank you to Emma. Thank you very much to Chloe and Cecil Robinson. Thank you to Hay Strouder and Quantum Wave. And thank you as well to Emily K. and Ann Perry. And, of course, you can sign up patreon.com/ElwoodCityLimits. We just came out with our latest episode of ECL Origins. It's part 2 of our Mainframe Entertainment 2-parter. First, we talked about Reboot. In this one, we're talking about Beast Wars. So if you love Transformers, if you love Beast Wars, check out that podcast. We had a lot of fun recording it. But it's time to get back to Arthur. Today, we are talking about Best Wishes, which is a George episode. And he is starting us off right away. And speaking of wishes, Lucas, this is seemingly George's greatest wish to open the show.
Hasn't he opened the show before?
I want to say yes. It's just that, Arthur, we've been watching this for so long. It's got to have happened once, right?
I'm starting to think, I'm like, who hasn't opened the show? I want to see Mr. Haney be like, being the principal is really rough.
Definitely want to see more of Mr. Haney. I want Oliver Frensky, like all the heavy
Oliver
hitters.
Frensky, yeah, working in waste management has always been trouble. Woke up this morning. That would be good. Who else do I want to see open the show?
You want to see Oliver Frensky in The Sopranos, which is going
to
be really, really difficult to do, but I appreciate
Who else have we definitely not seen address the camera?
I mean, a lot of the adult characters, in fairness.
I guess since we're adults, we always want to see more from the adults in the kids show because we relate to them a little bit more. Okay, let me think of the kids characters who hasn't opened the show.
Maybe like this is all like this is a guess just because I'm sure I'm not thinking of some off the top of my head. Has Sue Ellen done it before?
See, I feel like we've watched so many episodes. I feel like she has. I don't know.
Like it's gotta be.
I'm only asking into the air. I know you don't know, but hopefully, our listeners, they don't. Nothing gets by them.
No, of
someone
course.
Can let us know. I can swear that George has opened the show before, but now that Sue Ellen, I feel like she has as well. Anyway, moving on.
So this cold open is George, who is stumbling through doing the cold open in front of an audience, which is rare for Arthur or anybody, but he has to do it basically as a presentation. He's got index cards. Arthur briefly interrupts him to make sure that the sound is correct, and George's whole thing is about wishes and if they would be so great if they came true. And we see multiple instances of George doing different types of wishes to open the show. He says, I wish I could open the show. So he wishes on a candle, a birthday candle. He wishes on a shooting star. He blows an eyelash off his finger. And he does get his wish. But is it so great if it came true? The only thing I wanted to note here is that the gag with George blowing out his birthday candles is that he gets almost all of them. But then he misses one. So Wally blows it out. Now, with ventriloquist dummies, you throw your voice, which makes it sound like it's coming from the dummy. Is it possible to throw your breath?
Oh, good point. Let me look at
like
what angle he's holding Wally. Wally is close enough to him that I think George is still technically blowing it. George does not stop. Wait, let me look at this angle again. This is like the Zapruder film. No, George does not open his mouth. So air does come from the dummy.
So this is like This is like a Dungeons and Dragons monk feat.
I thought you were asking, does the wish still count? Which I'm firmly on the side of no, given that Wally is a separate character.
Oh, and we do talk about this later in the episode.
Oh, interesting. Because I was going to say, who's that? This is a dated comedian. The dated comedian with all the racist puppets. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh, not Jeff.
It's Jeff something.
Oh, hang on. See, I don't remember his name.
You're looking at one of his characters.
Jeff Dunham.
Jeff Dunham. So the whole point of Jeff Dunham was he wasn't saying the horrible things. His puppet was. So it's like, that's how you get away with it, is that you are not culpable for the actions of the puppet.
Foolproof, honestly.
Exactly. Legally foolproof. In the new Saw movie, they'll be like, he never killed anybody, it was the puppet. Anyway, I mean, I guess that kind of is the plot of Saw as is. The point being...
Most people are so ungrateful for the puppets they have in life.
The point being that I do not believe the wish transfers.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because I will bring that up in addition later on in this episode. So, it is all about wishes, and we see a lot of ways to make a wish, and I have to commend the writers here for... They never repeat a way to make a wish come true from a child's point of view. So, this starts off with Binky, Buster, and Francine. They are looking to make a wish on the first snowflake. So, if you see the first snowflake of the year, you get to make a wish. And they don't see it, and they want to wish for more snow. That's what they want to do. But George sees it, and he makes a wish, and the wish comes true. He presumably also asked for more snow, and they make this wish before class. After class, it comes true, which I had not heard of this first snowflake thing. When they're talking about wishes coming true, and they look out for a snowflake, they see like a piece of plastic instead. Binky has a very adult, kind of crushing line. He says, it's all a bunch of nonsense anyway. Wishes never come true. And it's like, man, you're 8. You can't be this broken already.
I liked Binky as the rationalist. Now, if we wanted to look at this at a deeper meaning,
yes.
One of the things we've always talked about is Arthur representing different socioeconomic backgrounds. And I think Binky's parents are a little bit less middle class than George's. We get a great shot of George's house later on in this episode, and he lives in this nice mid-century modern kind of ranch, which is actually nicer than Arthur's house in my personal opinion. Anyway, Binky, if I remember correctly, he still lives in a house. He's not living in an apartment like Buster or Francine, but right. I feel like his parents aren't doing as well as for, say, Arthur. So perhaps, his opinions about wishes is informed by his upbringing. And, some of Binky's wishes... Binky probably at some point wished to pass 3rd grade.
Oh.
And that wish did not come true, right? So Binky is a victim of his circumstance. This is why he is, again, Binky the rationalist. I thought it was an inspired choice to pick as the kid to be the skeptic. They could have just taken the easy way out and been like, oh, Brain's going to be like, statistically, wishes, blah, 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 blah. Instead, I like Binky being in this position.
No Brain to be seen. In fact, we put a lot of stock into wishes in a way that I think might seem familiar. So this wish comes true. Then Binky, Buster, Francine, and George, that's the main 4 of this episode, they make a wish by with dandelions, not the yellow kind, but the kind with the white little petals on them. So by blowing all of the petals off of it, you make a wish. And George does this, and his wish comes true. Now, the kids think that he wished for snow, but George actually wished for cupcakes, which, great. They're all just like, cupcakes? Why would you do that? I'm like, why wouldn't you wish for cupcakes? Go for broke. And they round the corner, and they come across the opening of a new store called Rudolph Stumpelmeyer's Cupcake Extravaganza, featuring a cupcake giveaway. So George's wish came true again. It's funny, there's a couple of instances here where I kind of call my shot. Very early on, I got the episode image for this, and we'll get into that in a second. And I saw this guy, and I'm like, well, there's throwaway character of the week, but I don't think that is. Am I correct?
Well, We'll cross that bridge. Let's just say there's some characters we got to talk about this week. Whether or not they'll be throwaway remains to be seen.
Okay. So we continue on with George now is on a bit of a hot streak. The kids are talking about it at lunch the next day with Muffy, and they're explaining it. There's a funny visual gag I liked with Muffy where she has her tray of food. As she's talking, and she doesn't really pay attention to this, she kind of picks up her bun, and it's just one of those typical cartoon buns, kind of frowns at it and then throws it away, which I thought was so wasteful, a really funny way to use her for visual humor. But the kids say that George has WishMojo, and they make the W hand sign, so with the two thumbs going out like that, WishMojo. And so everybody wants George to make a wish for them. He's suddenly incredibly popular.
Yeah, baby. I liked the little audio sting. There's a chorus when they talk about his WishMojo that really puts the emphasis on it. Great. Mwah. Props to the writers here. Amazing turn of phrase, WishMojo.
Welcome to WishMojo.com.
Oh,
and
no,
today
you
we're
ruined
counting
it.
down the
You
top 10
ruined it.
ways to make a wish.
See, you think it says a lot about the two of us that your mind immediately goes to WatchMojo.com. My mind immediately goes to Austin Powers.
I liked yours, but man, I haven't watched WatchMojo in a long time, thankfully. So they want to keep George's wishing power to themselves. Again, this WishMojo. But he is asked to make a wish for Jenna's birthday. And this time, it has to be for a big snow. A snow that's big enough to cancel school the whole 9 yards. And this is where I got the feeling, to bring this up again, we've talked about this, it feels like for the past several episodes, that around the point where we are in Arthur, they're getting more comfortable with remixing ideas of episodes. Now, they're not full remakes, unless in the cases where they actually are remakes in those rare cases, but they take the idea of an older episode and then they give it to a different character. At this point, with George being super duper popular, everybody wanting him to make a wish, this feels like a remix of the Magic Pencil episode.
And the Magic Pencil, the Lucky Pencil, that's like episode 3 of Arthur, isn't it?
It's in the second season, but it's still, again, very relatively early in the show's lifespan. So they're taking from much, much earlier in the show. And again, they're doing it enough where it's like it's a different character. It's almost a different idea. It's just thematically quite similar. So it's like, that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. But it also kind of goes
a different place too, right? The Lucky Pencil was all about how the pencil was a finite resource. As they started to use it, his luck was starting to get used up. Where, as far as we know, George is just, his luck doesn't run out.
Well, could be. And George is very much not used to the attention, and it's getting to him a little bit. Now, I wanted to make a note here. I always have the Arthur Wiki open when I'm watching an episode now, and the Arthur. This is a direct quote from the Arthur Wiki, since we're talking about George making a wish for Jenna's birthday. The first time Jenna has been spoken to, referenced, or mentioned since season 15. So for 2.5 years. Not a lot going on for Jenna, unfortunately. So, like I said, this is all getting to George. That night, he has a dream. He dreams that he is the king of a kingdom made of ice, and he has these penguin subjects. Now, this reminds me of two things. I wonder if you might be able to pick up what this visually reminds me of. Does anything come to mind when it's like kingdom of ice, penguin subjects?
Oh, I see. You're thinking of Adventure Time.
That's one of the things I'm thinking of. But what about something that you and I watched recently?
Us both together we watched this?
Not together, but around the same time. We even talked about it here on the show.
Kingdom of Ice, penguin subjects.
It's a smaller part of the movie that we both watched.
Give me a second here. It was a movie we both watched.
Mm-hmm.
And there was penguins. I'm drawing a blank here, Will.
Well, it seems that you weren't paying attention to the first 5 minutes of the Super Mario Brothers movie.
Oh, true. See, that's fresh in your minds. It's funny, my main criticism, okay, pocket Super Mario Bros. Movie talk right now.
Again.
My main criticism of the film is that, it was really fun to point at the screen and be like, I remember that from that video game. But the second the movie was over, I feel like I got, like, Men in Black memory wiped. And absolutely nothing from that movie retained except for the fact that they made Donkey Kong's dad kind of talk like he was Larry David. And what else stuck in my head? I mean, that's pretty much it. Oh, and the fact that I look like Mario's uncle. That was those are the only two things I really retained from that movie.
From the most money making animated movie of all time. There you go. You can't buy cultural impact, it seems. Anyway, it's just wanted to bring up those visual similarities, and yes, the Ice King from Adventure Time was the other thing I was thinking of. So in this dream, again, another way to wish, they have this giant wishbone that they artificially saw off so that George can make a big wish, but it doesn't work, and then the penguins begin to revolt on him. So George is worried that if he makes this big wish and it doesn't come true, then he won't have this popularity, or he won't have his friends anymore. It's a bit of a softer consequence or risk, I suppose, than some other ones. At Jenna's birthday, they're getting ready for George to do the wish. He's going to blow out the birthday candles and do it here. But Prunella, who I was happy to see. It's weird to say that we've come this far. I was glad to see Prunella. She stops George from wishing on Jenna's cake because apparently that's bad luck, which I fully believe hadn't heard of before. And
nobody has ever heard of the. She has a kind of a phrase she uses: "Snuff the candle on another's cake, endless misery ye shall wake." I believe is what she says, which none of the other kids seem to have ever heard before either. It seems that she made it up, but still, the sentiment rings true.
And then this brings us to your theory from the cold open. So, does that mean George has bad luck because Wally blew out the last candle? Does Wally count as a different person, or is he an extension of the same person?
Wow, and what is bad luck? Like, is it bad luck to be lucky, and then everybody's fawning over you, but then there's not enough room for the real George, and then, your luck runs out, and being lucky first makes the luck running out that much more unlucky? Who are we to say? Well, we're dealing in forces that we do not understand.
Absolutely we are. So George can't make this wish, but then they find a second way to do it. It's wintertime at this point, so they throw a coin onto a frozen pond, which apparently works the same as if you throw a coin into a non-frozen pond. And a little bit of drama here, but it does stay on the fountain so they can make a wish. George seems to wish for snow, and then the wish comes true. They get a huge snowstorm, school's canceled, it's all good. But at the end, George admits to Buster he didn't wish for snow. So this just happened, as he says, because it's winter. And he actually wished for a great rest of the year. That's basically it. The one other thing I wanted to say is that you can see when George wakes up to the snow day that he has one of those. Do you know what I mean when I say the iPod charger clock radio?
Oh, wait, let me see. I didn't notice this.
So when he wakes up, it's got like, it's like a clock radio that has like an iPod docking station.
Okay. Like an iPod Nano docking station?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I'm seeing this. Wow. What a throwback.
Like one of those
Dude,
like off-market ones, one of those cheapo ones.
Gen Alpha is going to be like, I found my grandpa's iPod Nano docking station. Isn't this crazy? Catch.
Yeah, not much to that. So
he's also got a baseball bat by his door for home defense.
Oh, classic. but we know that he's not a good baseball player. So what's he gonna do with all that?
That's what I'm saying. It's for if someone makes the mistake of coming into George's crib, Castle Doctrine. We don't know what state Elwood City's in. Maybe it's in Florida after all.
For when the purge happens in the Arthur universe. And now a word from us kids. This time, instead of a grade school, as we do sometimes, we go to a summer camp. This is the Arlington Center for the Arts Summer Camp. Elena is the one who gets a name, and basically at camp they declare a snow day in summer, which means that they are creating snowmen, snowballs, snow angels, all that stuff out of everyday household items. It's pretty much exactly what that is. I will say, though, because this is a summer camp at the Center for the Arts, I noticed that a lot of the kids feel a lot more camera ready than some of the kids that we get in like your typical grade school.
I wrote this down as well. You know, there's more of a curated bunch of kids here, and these are a theatrical bunch. I'll also say that the guy leading the summer camp was incredibly enthusiastic as well. Like, he really sold, we're going to make snow-themed arts and crafts on this sunny summer day, as we're bringing, it's summer, it's Christmas in July. Like, he really brought an enthusiasm for this pretty mundane camp activity. So it was a little bit infectious.
Yeah, and it also, I think this is just going to keep happening the longer we do this. He looked quite a bit younger than me. I remember when camp counselors were older than me, and that doesn't happen anymore.
Hi, everybody. It's Lucas, your favorite co-host from Elwood City Limits. I want to remind you folks that if you like listening to the podcast, first and foremost, the best way to spread the love is to tell a friend who is interested in Arthur or podcasts or animation or hearing about Nova Scotia for some reason. But there's some other things you could do as well. For instance, you can follow us on social media. Twitter is at ECL Podcast. The Instagram is at Elwood City Limits. My pet project, the Twitch channel, which we do live streams on sometimes, twitch.tv/Elwood City Limits Pod. And we also have a Facebook and Tumblr as well. You can also find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and youtube.com/Elwood City Limits. That's where Will has been diligently uploading all of the episodes if they're not on your podcast listening service of choice. If they aren't on one of those services, let us know. You can reach out to us on social media or via email at elwoodcitylimits@gmail.com. Finally, the Patreon is where you can find all of our paywall content, patreon.com/Elwood City Limits. This gives you access to the Discord, where we have a bustling community, as well as some exclusive videos, audio bonuses, such as commentary for the various Arthur movies and more, as well as some of our additional podcasts. For the kids is where me and Will cover all the PBS shows that aren't Arthur, as well as ECL Origins, where we really talk about any show from our childhood that we want. And most importantly, you get early access to every episode of ECL. You get to flex on your friends that you're getting it a week early. You can join for as little as $1 a month at patreon.com/Elwood City Limits. And now, back to the show.
And now, back to Arthur.
So we had a brief reappearance from Prunella, who I feel like we haven't seen in a while. And then she gets her whole episode, because the second half of this one is the Tardy Tumbler, which involves several of the girls from, well, not just Arthur's grade. There's, who have we got here? We've got Sue Ellen, we've got Molly, we've got a couple of randos, we've got Jenna, and we've got Marina, who is also making her return. They're taking a gymnastics course from new character here, potentially. I wonder if we'll see him again. Coach Bello, Boris Belinsky, or Bello, who is the stereotypical Russian gymnastics coach.
So, is it Bolinsky or Polinsky?
I heard Bolinsky.
Bolinsky. He just calls himself Bello, though. That's how his recorded album, which we'll talk about in a second, is credited to as Bello. Remains to be seen. I don't know if we can call this guy throwaway character of the week, because he's such a huge part of this episode, and he gets such a big introduction. Oh wait, have you done some research?
Yes, this is it. Like he has like a cameo appearance later, but this is it. He's a one episode character.
Wow. Well, my goodness, this might be the throwaway character of the week of all throwaway characters of the week, because if Dr. Fugue can come back for multiple different episodes. I was all ready for. I can't wait for Bello to show up again. Wow, I can't believe this is the only time. I would have savored this episode more, Will, had I known that this was the only time I was going to spend with Boris, because he's not the type of Arthur character we usually get. It's been a while, with all this talk of French stereotypes on Arthur. We've never seen a Russian stereotype before, and I personally was enjoying it.
No, and it's very much like a Simpsons character. It's basically just an accent. Now, I will say that the Russian Olympic gymnastics trainer is very much a trope now, but it is meant to be a specific parody of a real Olympic gymnastics trainer named Bella Caroli, who was the trainer for Olympic athletes such as Nadia Comaneci. I do also want to shout out here, I love the voice here for Coach Bello. It's voiced by an actor named Damon Papadopoulos. And for all you Bluey heads out there, he voices the character Goopy. So, I don't know who that is, but...
I know we got some Bluey heads listening right now. Listen, if you a Bluey head, put your paws up, because I know we got some Bluey fans. One of these days, Will, we got to talk about Bluey. We gotta watch an episode of Bluey. My sister loves that show.
Yeah, maybe that'll be something. It's funny because it's not a PBS show, so it doesn't fit into the Kids, a PBS Kids podcast.
And
it's
neither
also,
of us have watched it.
No, neither of us have watched it, and neither of us watched it growing up. So it also kind of doesn't fit into ECL Origins. But maybe something will come down the line.
We'll make a special third podcast called ACL Down Under, where we just watch an episode of Bluey and then it never comes back. Write that down for April next year. G'day, it's ECL Down Under.
I am writing down ECL Down Under. Bluey, we gotta go see Goopy. It's just noises.
Just like noises. A boomerang, it's not gonna come back till next year.
Okay, so as I said before, Marina is back, and she is taking this gymnastics class. Prunella is accompanying her as an aide, so just letting her know when to go and do her tumbling routine. Marina, if you don't remember, is Prunella's very good friend, and she's blind. Marina has been taking gymnastics from a young age, she says, and she wants to be chosen as part of Coach Bello's squad because she's talented, not because someone feels sorry for her. So, very much appreciate that. As Marina does her thing, Prunella she's not even dressed for it. She's brought a book with her, but Coach Bello instructs her to do her own routine, and she's like, okay. So she does some more slower paced handstands and stuff like that because she is a yoga practitioner. She's a yogi. So she does a bit of that, and Coach Bello ends up picking her along with Marina. We also get I'm using quotes here, debut of two background characters, these girls named Katie and Carol, who I strongly doubt we'll ever see again. In fact, I'm surprised they got named. So the episode itself has to do with Prunella and Marina both on this training team with Coach Bello. So Prunella begins her training with the coach, but she is late for their first session. She and Marina carpool there, so they're late, and they're under a 3-strike rule. As you mentioned, Lucas, Coach Bello, he's got this blonde hair, blonde mustache, and he talks like this. I am Coach Bello, and the very stereotypical Russian accent, and he gives Prunella a CD version of his audiobook of his autobiography, The Tiger of the Tundra. So this guy, as you said, is a recording artist. Yes.
The Grammy for spoken word. I wonder if Tiger of the Tundra made a blip that year. This was, very screen grabbable part of the episode. I recommend you guys look at this cover art. Funny stuff.
He is very much it's like you're either a tiger or you're a mouse in terms of how you present yourself and how you go about pursuing your passion. That's a big part of his training ideology. So late for the first session, 3 strikes and you're out rule. Prunella is not as into it. She has a bit of talent, but she's just not as into it. Marina is fully into this, and she's quite talented because she's been doing gymnastics for a long time. There's a dream that Prunella has after her first class where she dreams of being a complete natural thanks to her yoga skills. So we see Francine and Buster, who are doing commentary at this gymnastics meet. Prunella is effortlessly going through all of the different accoutrement of the typical gymnastics meet. I do want to note here, so Coach Bello is a parody of Bella Caroli. Nadia Comaneci is the Olympian that the real person coached. And we get a joke here. Coach Bello says his best student was Nadia, come in, I'm glad to meet ya. But he says it with a Russian accent. And
Wow.
it's like, I didn't even, it sounded like gibberish. And then I went to the Arthur Wiki and it's, come in, I'm glad to meet ya.
Wow. I can't even groan at that. That's crazy.
It's like, it's a bit sub-grown.
What is that's like on the level of, what is the villain in GoldenEye's name?
GoldenEye?
I'm looking this up really
Trevelyan?
quick.
006?
No, the girl, the femme fatale.
Xenia Onatopp.
Yes, Xenia Onatopp.
And many other punny Bond names. So Marina is training very hard, but Prunella is not taking it as seriously, and this ends up causing a bit of a rift between them. While they're there, Marina, her big fear with gymnastics is the uneven bars, because that's the one where you have to jump up and grab the bar, then kind of push yourself around on it. And she is afraid that if she jumps for it and it's not there, then she might get hurt, or she won't grab it and it'll be embarrassing. And she's taking it very, very seriously. She's practicing all the time on her off time, whereas Prunella is not. Now, we had a big thing about this a couple of episodes ago. I'll just quickly say that we get a couple of mentions of Henry Screever here, because instead of doing her gymnastics practice, Prunella instead goes to a movie screening of Henry Screever and the Giblets of Jeopardy at Muffy's Place, which she advertises as being in GastroVision, which is that when there is a piece of food that they are eating in the movie, they are eating it in real life. It's a cool idea. There are some great movies you could do that with.
It's true, and there's especially a lot of movies that focus on food, but I feel like there's a lot of movies where this would be really, like, disgusting. Including the ones that, like, they watch. I find the concept a little bit repulsive. Especially, in movies, actors don't actually eat the food that they're eating because they have to do the same take over and over again, and it would be like gorging themselves. I feel like if you were to eat everything that appears on screen in most movies, you'd be so stuffed, fitting like all those meals in the span. Like, imagine if you were watching Goodfellas. All that food looks great, but think about how many meals they have before the 2.5 hours is up.
You'd have to do it like a several course meal and have just like very small portions. Now, as you say, with Goodfellas, you're getting a lot of spaghetti, you're getting a lot of Italian in one day. So you gotta make sure you're ready for that. If you did it with something, for some reason, the first thing I thought of was like if you could do this with something like Another Round with Mads Mikkelsen, or Sideways, where they're drinking wine a lot. So you could,
oh my God, you'd get hammered.
Yes, and you'd have to be very, very careful. But again, like you could set
1984's Under the Volcano, and you almost drink yourself to death.
Yes, very careful. If you at home want to participate in GastroVision, be very, very careful and pick your movie wisely so that you're not completely like, geez. If you try to do this with, like, Lord of the Rings or something, there's so much different food in there. By the time you get to the cherry tomatoes in Return of the King, you'll be fit to burst. They're doing this. Prunella's stuffing herself. Marina is training very hard. Muffy offers a double feature with the next movie in line, Henry Screever and the Gremlins Gallstone, but Prunella has to beg off. And they're late to the next practice because Prunella's so full that she overslept again, and she and Marina argue a bit in the car. Marina is, I really appreciate getting to know a bit more about her and the stuff she likes beyond like reading and Henry Screever and that sort of thing. And she has a funny line. I think it was more that the delivery struck me as a little wooden, but also I don't know how you deliver this kind of line without tripping over a little bit, where Marina says, "You need to get out of this car."
Wow, savage.
burn.
Add that to the Arthur Savage Moments compilation.
So they are on the outs at this point, Prunella and Marina. And Coach Bello talks with Prunella because he knows that this is not her passion. This is not something that she's into, especially to the degree that Marina does. So he encourages her to find her passion. Now, the reason that Prunella stuck around was to be an aide to Emily, but Coach Bello knows that Marina is blind. He says, Bello knows all, sees all, and her mother called me.
I know he does. This is one of my lines of the episode. I don't know why this tickled me, but referring to someone as maybe you don't have a passion for gymnastics like your blind friend, and I feel like this would be more mean-spirited if he remembered any of the girls' names. But for instance, he never calls Prunella the entire episode. He calls her Yoga Girl.
Right.
So it's a little bit less mean-spirited. But referring to someone as your blind friend is pretty crazy.
Yeah, not exactly the most sensitive guy, but then again, he gets
results.
He's not exactly known for his sensitivity, I don't think. So encourages her to find her passion. When you find that passion, be a tiger instead of a mouse. So Prunella quits gymnastics. She's very happy to do so, but she does have a dream of herself as a little mouse, especially as Marina becomes very accomplished in gymnastics, and Prunella has not followed her passion in the same way, literally imagining herself as a tiny, not a mouse person, but like a mouse. So the next day, Prunella is woken up early again, even though she doesn't have to be, because there's a traffic jam outside her house. Somebody's car is broken down. Was it Marina's mother's car that broke down specifically? What matters is that there is a huge traffic jam, and Marina is going to be late again, traveling by herself, and that would mean 3 strikes, she's out. But
this
Prunella,
car, I'm looking at Marina's mother's car. Sorry,
Yeah.
Car Corner.
No, go for it.
This is a really weird car. It doesn't. It's funny. I wouldn't have noticed this if I hadn't gone back to look. But I was like, let's check out what's Maria's mom's wheels. So the back, it's a 5-door, hatchback. Okay, but it's well, you'd think it would be a 5-door hatchback, except despite having a wagon back. It's not a sedan. It's a 2-door. So it's like a coupe. It's like a hatch coupe. But it's got that weird, long wagon back like a Volvo. Really strange looking vehicle now that I, really pause it. One of those things where it's like characters being drawn with, 4 fingers or something. Like in animation it makes sense, but in real life that car would look really crazy.
My attention was successfully diverted, so I didn't even notice this, but now I have to go back and check it. So Prunella finds her passion in that moment, which she doesn't say outright. So you could interpret this the way you like to, but her passion involves helping Marina get to gymnastics on time. We've used it. The adjective Ferris Bueller and the verb Ferris Bueller is thrown around a lot in this podcast, but this is literally that end scene from Ferris Bueller of him running through the backyards. Prunella and Marina. Prunella is guiding her as they run, and they're going through different backyards as a shortcut to the gymnasium. So they're running and jumping through people's backyards. They just need a scene where Prunella runs through somebody's house or jumps on a trampoline. And very, very, very Ferris Bueller. They're almost there, but there is a fence in the way. Prunella scales a tree and acts as Marina's uneven bar and encourages her to do it, and that helps Marina get over her fear. And there's a transition as Marina grabs Prunella's hand. We see her in the gymnasium grab the uneven bar. And it turns out Coach Bello was also stuck in the traffic jam. So when he gets there, Marina has already conquered her fear. And both she and Prunella, in their own way, have become a tiger and embraced their passion, which I don't believe that Prunella explicitly says what her passion is, but you can kind of figure it out. So yeah, that's we're making the most of some of our quote unquote secondary characters by making a story about George and a story about Prunella. Lucas, when it came to best wishes, it felt like our discussion of it sputtered out a little bit. Does that translate to the episode overall for you?
I actually kind of enjoyed Best Witches. Like, it's not, the most remarkable Arthur episode, but I have quite a few notes for it. Like, there's a lot of things that really stuck out in my head. I thought it was fairly funny. I love WishMojo. I thought the Ice Palace was pretty inspired. It was really weird. Buster in his big ice jester costume. The ominous, playing with the fates. Something about wishes, Will, always feels like there's a darkness on the other end. Like, we're lucky George didn't win some sort of car combat competition and then met Calypso. You know what I mean? But
what a pull! Oh my god,
he would have turned him into a dummy or something. Who knows? I don't know. Maybe it's one of those ones where I really like talking about it more than I liked the episode itself. But I enjoyed myself with Best Wishes.
Best Wishes, certainly, by the time it was over, I was like, all right, well, that happened. But I don't feel negatively about it. I think it's a very light watch. So it's just a very pleasant one to put on. There's not a whole lot of consequences or it's like, oh no, what's going to happen? It's just like, no, this is just kind of nice. I appreciated the creativity in terms of finding all of the different ways that somebody could make a wish, and they barely repeated any. And yeah, I think it's perfectly fine. I just don't end up having a whole lot to say about it. I am a bit more appreciative of the Tardy Tumbler. Again, it's weird for me to be in the position to be like, oh great, a Prunella episode, but it provides a lot of variety, especially an episode after we did the double dose of DW and Bud of just like, okay, great, let's get some new characters in here. It means that I don't know if you noticed, Arthur wasn't in either of these stories at all, but mixing it up here, getting Marina back, always appreciate her and Prunella being at the forefront of stories. And I liked this idea of introducing the idea of finding one's passion, and that it doesn't have to necessarily be the same thing that your friends are interested in. There are, a couple of different things that you can take from this, especially because eventually Prunella does find her passion, seemingly, if you can interpret it, in helping her friends, or just friendship in general. But I liked introducing the idea to a younger audience of finding your passion, which is something that many of us think about and struggle with for a lot of our lives. So I thought that was a really cool way to do it. Bello is a very memorable character, even if he won't be around again. I wanted to note that Damon Papadopoulos was the VA for this because I think he did a really fun job. I think he had a great voice for it, and I'm just really I'm pleased at how this episode turned out, and I'm also pleased that I'm at the point where I'm looking forward to stories involving Prunella, and that Marina is still around, and we haven't forgotten about her.
Yeah, I was pleasantly surprised with the Tardy Tumbler as well. If nothing else, for, again, being a really creative and original episode. As much as, they're not just ripping off themselves with some of these episodes that have echoes of old Arthur concepts, but one of the things I've always appreciated about Arthur is how unique and creative it can be, and how it can show me something I had not necessarily seen before, and a parody of a Russian gymnastics coach is exactly what the doctor ordered. So I was pleasantly surprised with this episode. Justice for Bello. We got to start a letter writing campaign for him to make an appearance in one of those Arthur PSAs or the Arthur podcast or something, because I can't believe this is his only appearance. And I've always talked about, it's the one that flew over the cuckoo's nest ending. It's the ending where a character, personally fails, but they inspire another character to succeed. And that always kind of rises some passionate feelings in my heart. So I liked the way it wrapped up as well.
Yeah, I think this is just a pleasant episode of Arthur. Certainly nothing game-changing, but nothing terribly annoying. Just very nice to kind of sit back and watch, which is what we're all about here. Thank you for joining us for Elwood City Limits, and we appreciate you being here. Now, I do want to say, there's going to be a little bit of a change up to the schedule as we get deeper into September, which means that we're going to have some guest voices on the show, and we are also going to... So we had ECL Origins come out technically on the first day of September this month, and so we're going to delay the next episode of For the Kids, a PBS Kids podcast, to the beginning of October so that Lucas can be here for it as well. I'm going to do a bigger Patreon update to keep everybody informed, but I'm very excited for the guests that we're going to have on this show near the end of the month. And I'm also excited to double up on For the Kids, a PBS Kids podcast, because we did 2 episodes of ECL Origins, both back-to-back, and now we're going to do 2 episodes of For the Kids back-to-back. And I think when we come back to that in October, we're going to be talking about, I'm going through all of the ones that were suggested multiple times, and this one was suggested multiple times. I'm interested to know more about Angelina Ballerina. So we're going to talk about Angelina Ballerina in October. Perfect way to enter the spooky season, I know. So look out for that, patrons, patreon.com/Elwood City Limits, if you want to get in on all the great extra content and our Discord community and more. Otherwise, next time here on Elwood City Limits, we're going to be talking about Fountain Abbey and Arthur Calls It. So we've had Arthur comment on other PBS shows like Masterpiece Theater, and now we've come around to seemingly another PBS show. I mean, I don't know how much is Downton Abbey is going to be involved in this, so we're going to have to wait and see. But otherwise, Lucas, make sure that you brave this weather as best as you can, and I don't know all right, I guess I should ask because I don't know enough about it. What type of character are you playing in Baldur's Gate 3? Oh,
I'm playing a bard. Okay,
that makes sense. Yep.
He's he's based off a wrestling persona my friend had come up with one time, where he was like, if I was a wrestler, I'd be Fred Shred, and he basically had come up with the Rick Boogs gimmick years before Rick Boogs. So I've made Fred Shred in Baldur's Gate 3, but he's Frederick Shred, and he plays a lute as opposed to the guitar. So fun stuff. I'm really enjoying that game.
All right, so whether you are shredding the lute in Baldur's Gate 3, whether you are getting rid of Las Plagas in Resident Evil 4, or whatever it is you're doing on the way back to school or back to the September season, thanks again for listening to Elwood City Limits. My name's Will Young, and for Lucas Mancini,
it's been a pleasure serving you. I hereby resign.
I am Calypso, and I thank you for listening to Elwood City Limits.